It could be that when your soul comes into this body, all the way down into the physical world of sheker and shtus, there's going to be many obstacles, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, al limud ha-Torah v'kiyum mitzvahs, on the learning of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs. Another way also of getting your Hebrew skills sharpened up is to try to follow along with your eyes with what I'm saying in the class, because I am translating every word and you'll pick up a lot of vocabulary that way. Right? So he says, there's going to be chas v'shalom obstacles on learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs. And of course, the evil is overpowering in this lowly world. Hashem made it like that, right? He made it like that for a reason. Because im kol zeh, nonetheless, eino mispal mizeh. Klal, you don't get worked up by it. You don't allow the obstacles to actually stop you. V'osek babudasu b'limud Torah v'kiyum mitzvahs. You stay at it. You stay in the game. And that's called cutting the bottom of the kuf off. It's going to try and drag you down, but you hold your ground. Adarabba, and on the contrary, you actually get strengthened by the opposition. As we said before, when one opponent in a wrestling match gets strong, i.e., your Yetzer Hara, right, or your Yetzer, right? So then you then respond in kind, right? And this is the way of milchama. Right, so yisron b'derech milchama v'avoda rabba.
When the animal soul gets stronger, that's a good thing.
In a certain sense, in davening, it's actually the opposite. So I paused for a second. What the Alter Rebbe says in davening is slightly different. What he's saying here, what the Alter Rebbe says in davening is that when you see you're having a lot of negative thoughts in davening, it's actually because your godly soul came to play, and so all of a sudden your animal soul feels like it has to fight back. Here he's saying kind of the opposite, and they're both true. When you see that there's a lot of opposition coming your way. Right, so like the meek person who doesn't realize what he's doing in this world, he'll get dragged down by it. But on the contrary, it should spur you to strengthen yourself and fortify yourself, and on the contrary, that brings out more powers of your godly soul than it would have even if it didn't have that fight in its hands.
So it motivates you to break yourself if you want it.
Yes, we're going to see in the upcoming chapters, because we got 2 more Maimarim in this series, don't forget, that there's a concept of Netzach that we're going to deal with almost exclusively for like an entire Maimar. It's one of the most brilliant pieces of Chassidus out there, in my humble opinion. And what he's saying basically is, Netzach means to win, right? And you can only win something over if you have an opponent. And Netzach taps into like one of the deep, basically the essence of the soul, because constantly winning and overcoming, what does the word Netzach actually mean? It means victory, but it also means eternity, eternal. How do those two things go together? Because someone who always wins is eternal, right? If you're at some point lose, you're not eternal, you end, right? So the idea of being like mamish eternal, so the eternality of the soul, which we all have an eternal soul, is that it never loses. So if it never loses that, and you see the Jewish people, we get beat up and they come after us every single generation and we never lose, right? Somehow we always come up on top because somehow we always pull out like a crazy power of infinity, and basically something comes out of us which overcomes any obstacle. So that wouldn't actually come out of us unless we had these crazy maniacs coming after us. So the eternality of the soul actually comes forward when there is an obstacle. So don't look at the obstacle as something negative. On the contrary, that's why Hashem put you in a nefesh bahamis. That's why He put you in an animal soul. He's giving you obstacles, but it's actually for our best interest, because on the contrary, not only do you stand strong, but He's saying you fight, and this is a tremendous avoda. And that's what he says now in the parentheses, which is new for today. He says, Asher Yedua, she said, Iker HaNitzuach. That's the main concept of winning, right? Shua Tokef, the Zrizus Vavoda. It's the idea of the strength and the Zrizus in Avoda. So don't forget, there's also a little piece of Tanya. It says, V'yashkem Avram baboker, v'yachavosh es chamoro. Avram got up in the morning and he saddled his donkey. What did he get up for? To kill his son. Blunt and to the point. But yeah, he got up to kill his son. Hashem told him to kill his son. So the Tanya, it says, that wasn't even considered necessarily the big test that he got up to kill his son. Why? Because God told him directly, mamash like a prophet. And there was many other people in later generations who died on Kiddush Hashem that God didn't come and speak to them as a prophet. So although it's pretty crazy and awesome that he did that, that's not necessarily the thing that stands forever as a schus that we mention all the time that's going to save us, because there were others that had that schus and even potentially even more. What was the real schus of Avram, says the Tanya? that he did it bezrizus. The Yash came out from Baboka. He got up as early as he could, right? Not to learn Hasidus. He got up as early as he could to go kill his son. And that's what he's saying. Like, that's the idea of when the obstacle comes. On the contrary, you have to fight it with a zrizus, with an alacrity. You jump to the point, right? Because you're not going to win a fight if you're sluggish, right? So therefore, if the fight comes after you, your true resource is your zrizus, your alacrity, and that's what it says. The ikar and nitzuach, the main victory comes from that.
He was excited to go do that.
He was excited to go and fulfill the will of Hashem, right? Whatever it was, that's the point. Whatever you ask me to do, I mean, that's basically the point, right? No matter what you ask me to do, even the most ridiculous, crazy thing, I'm here for you, not for me. Right? I mean, it's a whole world of conversation about the Akedah. Anyway, after the parentheses, Hine ayidei zeh, through this, who yisra or naisa mibiru v'zicha chachoshech. Then, when you fight against the darkness, you wind up with what's called the advantageous type of light, right? Which is a light which comes from refining and purifying the darkness. In other words, there's two different types of light. There's just plain old light, right? But then there's light that you eke out of a negative situation, and that is a much more advantageous light. For the reason that we just said, you pull out powers of the soul that would never come out, even though your soul above is sitting in the light. Nen in miziva shechina, benefiting from the rays of the shechina. What do we say your soul is called when it comes into this world? Be'er mayim chayim, which means a well of living waters. It's called Mayan Ganim. It's called a wellspring for the garden, which means your soul who's sitting in Gan Eden above gets fed from your soul in this world, because the type of light that you manifest from godliness by turning the darkness into light, by fighting your Yetzer Hara, is so profound that it sheds light on your neshama above, who's anyway sitting in divine bliss and divine light. Because the light that comes from darkness is a much more powerful light. V'zeu da'al zman da'asid lavo kasiv, and that's why in the future time it says, regarding Mashiach, va'amdu raglav, right? Excuse me, al haradis, he doesn't finish the patziv, it says his legs will stand on the Mount of Olives. And what does it mean his legs will stand? Hu akima bebeis raglayim, that means standing with two legs. Who's standing with two legs? The hay, right? That's what we're saying. The os kuf, when it comes to the kuf, yesh lo rak regel echad, the kuf only has one leg. That's the kana of the kuf. That's not going to stand. Its existence is very shaky. It's only on one support. The eno kiyum, that's not called lasting. That's called, it's destined to fail. It's sheker. And that's what we say, that falseness eventually will be uncovered. Sheker does not stand. Right? It can stand for a while. It can show its ugly teeth, but in the end of the day, it will be discovered, and sheker will always fall away. So the kuf, which is on one foot, it's unstable, just like sheker of this world. It's unstable. About os hay, when you cut off the kuf, and you make a hay out of the kuf, hara yeshbo, yeshlo beis raglayim, now you have two legs, shu madekushtakai, and that's the idea that truth will stand. Right? At the end of the day, the truth will prevail. V'zeu amdu raglav. That's what it means. Mashiach's going to stand on his two legs, beis raglayim. Uba de avoda, and how's he going to do that? How is we all collectively as the Am Yisrael going to reach this place? Through the avoda la'afeich me'os kuf, from the avoda of transforming from the kuf of the klippa, which is made hanaisa mireish, which comes from a reish, right? First from lacking bittul, and then having false thoughts and false speech, then you wind up descending into a kuf, and turning that into the hay of kedusha. V'zeu amida da'atzei shitim. And when we go back to the Mishkan now, and we say it says atzei shitim omdim, crushing omdim, right? That the pillars were standing. That's what we mean when we say standing. Standing, we said before in the beginning of the O's, because it's like a amud which connects the roof to the floor. Which we said, what was the significance of that? If you recall, is the idea that in order to get godliness to come down into such a dark place, the floor, it happens from a level of divine light which comes from the keser, the roof, right? So in other words, the idea is that these pillars, amudim, right, also represent the idea of grabbing the keser light, the sovev light. But here we're saying they're also called amida, omdim, because like the hay of Mashiach's two legs on Har Zesim, they're going to be standing. In other words, because they're made from cutting off the kuf, which is a transformation, i.e. shtus to kedusha, or the keresh from the sheker. Yeah.
Was the crushing the floor?
No, they're the boards. The
The
boards.
sides.
Yeah, the wood
Oh,
beams.
Okay.
That's what it means omdim. They're
What's it
standing.
mean to stand on two legs, though? What's the metaphor?
Again, because the kuf has one leg. When you
Right.
cut off the kuf, it has two legs.
Okay.
So that's called standing. You're not really standing if you're on one leg. That's not called, because it won't stand, right? You'll fall eventually.
So what's the metaphor?
The metaphor is that well, first of all, the metaphor we just said, right, is that the whole point of life is to cut the bottom of the kuf off and to make it a hay so it stands, right? That's the idea of transforming darkness to light. Now, the idea is that is found inside the Mishkan. Why? Because first of all, the Mishkan is made from shtus, atzei shitim. Second, it's called from keresh. So the whole idea there is that it's about cutting off the kuf and transforming darkness to light. But the point is that they're called omdim, which means those crushim have this quality of being standing, right? Because that's what the Mishkan is all about. It's transforming darkness to light. Got it?
Yeah, thank you.
V'zeu amida da'atzei shitim da'amida mora ala kiyum, the hedra shinoi. Because standing refers to being fixed and not going away, the absence of change. V'hainu, because again, change is sheker. This world is like a world of change, which is basically lying to you. We have to bring eternality into this world of sheker. And the idea is that, what does it mean we want to transform the change into eternality? This is the idea of revealing the verse, which was in yesterday's Tanya, Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi. I, Hashem, have not changed. Right? So, what does that mean? That's actually a very deep thing. We could probably spend an hour on it. But the simple meaning is that Hashem makes a promise to one of the prophets, and he says, I am Hashem, I have not changed, and you, the Bnei Israel, will not be destroyed. In other words, he kept his promise, not going to destroy us from the world. But really, it means, like in a deeper sense, Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi means that I am the same before the world was created and after the world was created. In other words, that even though it seems like there's something happening here, right, and that there's this basically big yesh and separateness and feeling of disconnected reality which exists on its own, it's actually just because of tzimtzumim. Hashem is hiding the true reality, which is presently in this place. The Or Ein Sof is in this place, the Kesser light, the Sovev. It's just that Hashem is intentionally hiding that from us, right? In order for us to have free choice, etc., and to live in a world of sheker, so that we can access light, which can only be accessed by turning darkness into light. And therefore, we will reveal when we do that process the level of Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi, the changeless essence of Hashem, which is always here, which comes out through our avoda.
What's Shanisi?
Change, from the word shinoi. The nira b'muchash, and which means in the ultimate we will see with our very senses she'olam v'kol asher bo chayusum elokus, that the world and everything in it is living on godliness and godliness alone. Kitzer, on chapter 9, Krashim Omdim, this notion that the boards are standing is that they're mechabrim Or Ein Sof la'olamos. It means that they're like a pillar which joins the Or Ein Sof to the world. As we said before, the Kesser is required in order to bring godliness all the way down to the floor. And then we explained the idea avoda lamata, that specifically through an avoda that can only be done in this world, because the angels don't have a Yetzirah. Kor simakana, we can cut the reed of the kuf and make it into the word hine, which is the idea of revelation of light, of such a light which is Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi, the light of Sovev, the unchanging eternal God, and bring it into this world specifically. Okay, going on now to the last chapter of the second Maimer. Maimer, by the way, is called Hayosheves Bganim, he who sits in gardens. The second installment of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Hemshech that was given out on the day of his passing, which is tonight, by the way, Yud Shvat. Major holiday on our hands here, so B'ezrat Hashem will be properly prepared for it. We've been preparing for a month or more, our whole lives. And this is what it means, make me a temple and I will dwell within them. And again, it says, B'socho lo ne'amar, elo b'socham. It doesn't say I'll dwell within it, but rather I'll dwell within them. B'toch kol echad ve'echad, meaning to say that each one of us is supposed to perform this concept of making a mishkan out of ourselves. What's a mishkan? Take your animal and transform it. Take your sheker and transform it. Take your keresh and turn it into a keresh. Take your sheker into a keresh. So this is the idea of even the commandment in the Torah. It says, make me a mishkan, I'll dwell within them, not in it, because it's clearly talking about our own avoda of this transformation. The kol echad ve'echad, each an individual person, kasher mahapech chashucha l'nehora, when he transforms his darkness into light. Let's learn this line again. He reveals the glory of God in all the worlds. What does it mean? We learned this in the beginning of the mimer. What does it mean he reveals the glory of God in all the worlds? Someone with an intelligence of this pasuk, please remind us what it means.
I have an idea.
Yeah?
That our comprehension gets awakened, like we're able to comprehend more.
Okay, good. What does it mean specifically, the glory of God in all the worlds? What does that mean? Someone explain that to me, yeah.
There's these different worlds, and we are the lowest worlds where like darkness is like very, very strong. But when we succeed, the upper worlds, which don't necessarily get that success, they then get that success also.
So
even
I'm
up to the top.
gonna respectfully disagree, although you make the obvious point. In other words, you translated it correctly, but that's why I stopped us, because this is an unusual way of learning this verse. It sounds like it means exactly what you said, that when we do this act of hiskafia, right, then we reveal the glory of God in all the worlds, whether it, like, in other words, each world gets a little light in accordance with their understanding. We get ours, they get theirs. That's not what it means.
It's equal.
What does it mean, right? It means we reveal the glory of God in all the worlds, means a light which is equal in all the worlds. In other words, there's a certain, like, the light you're talking about is definitely not equal in all the worlds, because if you have a bigger vessel, you can get more light. If you have a smaller vessel, you can get less light. That's what it sounds like it's saying, but it's not saying that. It's saying the opposite of that. It's saying you reveal a glory of God, that level of the glory of God which is equal in all the worlds. What light is equal in all worlds? The Sovev light. Why? Because there's no world can perceive it. There's, right? That's exactly what it means. There's a light, because it's infinite. It doesn't matter if you have the biggest vessel or the smallest vessel. No vessel can hold it. So but it's everywhere. As we said a moment ago, I am Hashem, I have not changed. His infinite light is found everywhere. It's just a matter of the fact that he's hiding it from us. So, and not only from us, from every entity and every being, whether it be an Atzilus, Bria, Tzir, or Asiya, because since it's infinite, no vessel can hold it. That's what we say, Leis machshava tefisa beklal. No thought can hold you at all. Not even machshava hakduma da'ak. Not even the primordial thought of Adam Kadmon, because it's infinite. And yet that light, which is equal in all the worlds, i.e., unable to be perceived equally, that's the light that surges through when you cut the kuf. Right? So this is the idea of turning darkness into light, which is only available in this world, is a very big deal. Atzilus can't pull that off. Bria can't pull that off, because they don't have enough evil in their world in order to transform darkness to light, in order to usher forth that light. Right? So this is the concept of it's a very special thing to be alive in this world. 70, 80 years, I'll buy 180 years, but still, every moment we have our hands on something that's eternal, to the level that even the higher worlds have no access to it.
Yeah.
They only get it from us.
We got the darkness.
So he says that by transforming this darkness, right? By transforming this darkness into light, we reveal the glory of God, which is equal in all the worlds. Nice yisruna or, and that's called this advantageous type of light. The or meir bagilui, and light will shine openly, and that's the meaning of atze shitim. This is the notion of the shitim wood, which is what is misbarer mashtus olam zeh. That's why the Mishkan, the central headquarters of God, is made from this material, which is called shtus, because specifically shtus is the ingredient in order to bring essence into the world, which is what the Mishkan holds. Which again, you are a Mishkan, right? It says, "I'll dwell within them." V'zeu gam ken shnikram crushim. That's also why they're called crushim, because that is the same idea, taking the sheker and the kesher, these negative combinations, and specifically from them making a mishkan keresh. When we biro zed I say kashi a mishkan, and from that refinement of negativity, that's how you hold a mishkan. That's how you hold the essence. Ubavoda hu masha de esekator v'kiyuma mitzvos. And in avoda, this means by learning Torah, doing mitzvahs. In other words, taking your animal self, which could just as easily be doing animalistic things, but you take the animal and you put it on the altar of Hashem. You learn it, go to yeshiva, you break your teeth on olive base, right? This is, and that's a very big maniya v'ikuvim, right? That there's a lot holding you back from that particular avoda, because you're like, what? This isn't for me. I'm an intelligent man. I should sit here and learn Aleph Beis. I'm not 4 years old, right? So there's a lot of Yetzer Hara and Machshava Zara standing in your way to do that. But it's not so hard when you think about the fact that actually, on the contrary, since I'm not 4 years old, I really better get this language down right away. But it takes a tremendous war with yourself to sit there and do that work. But through this work, fulfilling Torah mitzvahs, mahapchim hahergish da'olam, what we do is we transform the feeling of worldliness, which here it says in Yiddish, dem Welt gefühl, the feeling of worldliness, just thinking that you're like a being of natural being, right? And you turn this into a hergish eloki, you turn this into a godly feeling. Hainu de hergish ha'olam hu lamata min hadas kanal, meaning the feeling of the world is lower than intelligence. And Daniel, we had this whole conversation yesterday. I don't want to get back and anger you, but the idea of, let's not talk about English, let's talk about the Sfat, the idea of siesta, right? That we're going to stop all of our business at 2 o'clock, close the doors even though the guy's sitting behind the counter for no reason, and just let people stand in line, which is an irrational conduct of the world. All over the world, they just do irrational things. We're going to take this irrational, the whole world is just irrational, period. We're going to take this feeling of worldliness, which has to be, I got to watch the Super Bowl. What? But you have mamish a wedding of your daughter that night. We'll put it on the TV and whatever, right? No, it's irrational. Right? It has to be. It's the rules. So, the idea is that you take that irrationality and you use it against itself. Through occupying yourself in Torah mitzvahs in an irrational way, right? You transform the darkness into light. And then you'll start to feel the beauty, the sweetness, right, and the delight of the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, which essentially, as we said before, you only have a certain amount of sort of excitement. If you're going to put your excitement into animalistic things, you're not going to have a feeling for godly things. But the more you pull yourself out of your aggressive diet of junk food, and you start to eat your vegetables, you're actually going to enjoy your vegetables. Believe it or not, it's like you only have a certain amount of excitement. If you don't eat, and the only thing you eat is healthy food, you're gonna love it. You're gonna wait for mealtime, right? So too is the same with Torah mitzvahs. If you put your energy there, it's going to wind up being a delight. And that's what it means. I've come to my garden, which really means my wedding canopy, my chuppah, to the place where I originally was. Because the original intention of creating the worlds, Hashem wanted a dwelling place in the lowest worlds. How? And it only happens by putting man into a situation where he has darkness all around him, which he has to subdue and transform. So the person who does this work, Hayosheves Bganim, right? In other words, he was sitting in the gardens. We said that even though we're going back to the original translation, he who sits in the exile, but finds himself in the shul, even though the nations around him are trying to schlep him into assimilation, he finds himself in the shul, right? And ultimately, Ganim also goes on the two levels of the Gan Eden, as we said before, Gan Eden Elyon and Gan Eden Tachton, right? Kol echad lefi midregos avudaso hem chaverim. Right? And the idea is that through your avoda here, you create light in the garden, which is, in other words, by sitting in the gardens below, making in the shuls, you create light in the gardens above, as we said before. and you cause it that these heavenly beings, which are called the Hayosheves, who is officially, what did we say before? The definition of Hayosheves Bganim had really two meanings, right? One we said was that he who sits in the shuls, right? We're like sort of in the gardens of others, and yet we find ourselves in the shuls. But there's another meaning that Hayosheves Bganim means those who are sitting in Gan Eden, and it's referring to the souls above or to the angels above. So, and they go together, because if you find yourself in the shul, then he who sits in the gardens above, makshivim l'kol kolech, they're going to listen to our voice. They're going to, as we've been saying, benefit from the avoda that we do down here, because we draw out the sovev light, right? They're going to makshivim l'kol ha'oskim b'Torah mitzvahs. They're listening. Right now they're listening. and they're having tremendous delight from the occupation in Torah mitzvahs. V'zeu hashmieni. That's what it means. Hear me. Shehem agormim iloi b'mailas aliyas and neshamas. We down here are the ones who cause the elevations of the souls up there. V'zeu Hayosheves Bganim. And this is what it means. He who sits in gardens. Amar Kadosh Baruch looking at Israel. Hashem said to the Jewish people, Ata pezura begola. You who are scattered in the exile. V'roe Bganim shelacherim, and you're pasturing in other people's gardens, right? V'hu al derek tekasiv. And this is in the same manner that it says. Ki ka'arba ruchos hashamayim perasti eschem. It says into the four corners of heaven I spread you out. In other words, we're all dispersed and in an exiled state. Uba kol zed, nonetheless, Yosheves b'bati knesset zebatu midrashos lasok b'Torah, and nonetheless we sort of control ourselves and we have a skafia on the assimilation and we come and learn Torah in the shuls and study houses. Ubifrat kavias itim l'Torah barabim, particularly when it comes to setting up times to learn Torah in the masses, which means at least 10, which we're doing at this very moment. That means that the friends, who are the friends? The Malachei Asharis, the ministering angels, were called friends because they don't have any jealousy or hatred or competition amongst them. They listen to our voice. 10 Yidden sit together and they learn Basi Lagani, Erev Yud Shvat. You can be sure that all the neshamas above are mamish capturing the or sovev, and they're listening to every single thing we're saying. And based on this, the Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem. I just want to check our timing here. Okay, this is a good place for us to hold, because this we're going to launch us into the whole next mimer as well. But now we're going to deliver ourselves into this new concept of also what's going on in the parshas right now. When the Jewish people called it Tzivos Hashem, when we came out of Mitzrayim, right? Al Tzivosam. So in this process, it doesn't just create a nice tingling feeling for the angels, but through this, the Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem, which is an action of messianic proportions. Okay, we'll hold here. Everyone should have a strong Yud Shvat B'ezrat Hashem. Okay.